Good evening and welcome back to the Done Deal Show. Breaking news aplenty for you this evening. We know Jadon Sancho is red. Jadon Sancho is a Manchester United player. That is complete. That is done. That is dusted. But we're going to delve into what next for Manchester United. Centre-backs, midfielders, young marauding players. We're going to go into all of that. Also, Nuno Espírito Santo is now the new manager of Tottenham Hotspur. It's been a long and winding road, to quote the Beatles, but they're finally there. Tottenham, they have that manager, and my personal opinion, it's an excellent, excellent signing for them. I'm joined this evening by leading sports journalist Daniel Harris. How are you, my friend?
All right, thanks. How's it going?
It's very, very good. I'm enjoying Wimbledon. I'm loving the Euros, and today it almost feels like the last week. All the transfer news has led to today, and it's just come out in its droves.
Yeah, things, I guess, because teams are starting to get knocked out of the Euros and people are starting to move, I suppose. It's nice to have some actual transfers happen rather than just the usual back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, because people are now out, there is that notion of, well, we're going to delve into some of those deals a little bit later. The likes of Raphael Varane, you can actually talk to him and his people. He's no longer in a bubble. As it were, any German players that are linked with moves, they're out. I mean, the thing is, no one expected France, Portugal, or Germany to be out this early. So it's for the transfer market, it certainly opened some things up. But of course, the two big bits of breaking news. We'll get onto Man United a little bit later. But Spurs have now finally announced a new manager. It's Nuno. I'm not too sure whether it was their first choice, 10th choice, or 100th choice. But what kind of appointment do you think Spurs fans can expect this to be?
I'm not sure. I tell you, he had some really good players at Wolves, and on the face of it, he did a good job. He took them from somewhere lower to somewhere higher, established them in the Premier League, admittedly with the help of Uncle George Mendes, and some good players. But I absolutely hated watching his Wolves team. And the reason why I hated them wasn't that they played dull football, although they did, because any team can play how they want. And they're not really answerable to the likes of me. Like, if Wolves fans are happy with that, then that's fine. But I found it really frustrating watching his team because it didn't have to be that way. He had some like Moutinho, Neves, Traore, Jimenez, Jota, lovely players. And yet, the way that they played, where they'd basically they'd stick in a game for an hour, 75 minutes, and then win with a counter at the end. I felt like they had the players to play more dominant football than that, more exciting football than that. And not only that, but I thought that playing like that would have made them a better team. Particularly, like, the thing that always really stuck with me was after lockdown, and Wolves were right in there with a chance of getting into the top four. And they just carried on playing like that. I remember a game that they played, I think it was Burnley. It was like that kind of team where they conceded a late goal, having really done nothing to try and win the game. And that'd be my problem with Nuno. And maybe he'll want to try to do something different at Spurs. Maybe that's part of the brief he's been given at Spurs, because Spurs have just been Mourinho and people weren't happy with Mourinho's football either. But he strikes me as a natural conservative, and it's hard to change if that's who you are. In the end, like, teams are usually an expression of their manager's personality in one way or another.
Yeah. Do you think that there could be this? I look at the Spurs players right now. Heaven knows what's been going through their mind over the past couple of months, especially since the season ended. We're getting Conte, no. We're getting Fonseca, no. Gattuso's being spoken to. We've gone away because of a protest. There seem to be so many trials and tribulations. They've ended up with Nuno. Some will like it, some will hate it. Do you think this is going to be the kind of appointment that could change Harry Kane's mind in relation to him looking to leave?
No, because I don't think it's really about that. Because even if they got the right manager, and Nuno may be the right manager, but I don't think he's going to inspire anyone just on the face of who he is. I don't think anyone is ganting on playing for Nuno Espírito Santo, however much fun playing for him may be, or whatever good job he's going to end up doing. And the thing with Harry Kane is he's running out of time. He wants to win trophies, and if he goes to Man City, let's be real, like, it's almost guaranteed that will happen. And if he stayed at Spurs, it's almost guaranteed it won't happen. And Nuno isn't going to change that. Spurs aren't suddenly going to become a team that can challenge for the title, and the fact that they were able to was because Pochettino did a brilliant job, and also some of the other big teams were having some time off, and Liverpool, Man City, United, Chelsea are not. No, I mean they lost the league to Chelsea, didn't they? But sorry, so United, Liverpool, City are all much better now than they were then, and so Spurs have got to bridge a financial gap to all those clubs, whereas previously there was only, they lost when Pochettino's team were at their best. They lost one league to Leicester and one league to Chelsea, and that if you get a good manager, it's possible for a team like Spurs to compete, but it's much harder for a team like Spurs to compete. Although in the first instance, they're gonna if Kane goes, they're gonna have a chunk of money to buy some good players with. They didn't do a great job of it when they had the Bale money, although it turned out better than it looked like for quite some time. And whether they can do that with the Kane money if they get it is, Nuno's brought some really good players at Wolves. Even all the players that I named, even since then he's bought Podence and Neto, who are also really good players. So he seems to know what a good player is, and he has probably good connections to an agent who has able to bring in players. But
well, of course, Uncle Mendes, as you say, Nuno was his first ever client many moons ago. So there's a great connection there. The interesting thing is, when they were in the Championship, they played really good football, and there was a lot of excitement about them coming to the Prem. And as you say, I think they just naturally they became more and more conservative, more and more pragmatic, almost year on year. When you actually expected them to slowly move, I got it year one, but you expected to slowly move away from it. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that changes. The Harry Kane situation. While we're talking about him here, lots of rumors that it's Manchester City where he may be going, along with Jack Grealish. What's the latest as far as you're aware on sort of the Harry Kane transfer and the Jack Grealish move?
I haven't heard anything about Grealish. I've heard that Kane is going to City. I had heard some time ago that was where he wanted to go, and I've heard that will be. Whether or not it will, £100 million, which was that the amount that people were talking about last week? That doesn't sound like enough to make Levy sell, but we don't really know what the arrangement is. And I think if I was Harry Kane, one of the first things I'd be doing would be having an extremely stern word with my agent, because I remember when he signed that contract, saying, was it a 6-year contract, a 7-year contract, whatever it was, thinking if he hasn't been told if he hasn't got a get out clause there, then his agent has done him a massive disservice, because why would any footballer sign that long anywhere? Because you never know what's going to happen. Never mind, this is Spurs, where the money isn't there to sustain the success, and it's all predicated, a lot of it, on Harry Kane, the person who was signing that deal. I've absolutely no idea why he signed that deal or why his agent allowed him to sign that deal, but because we don't know the details of his apparent gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy, it's hard to know how likely he is to move or what the fee might be. But yeah, I've heard he's going to City.
Yeah, the fee is one of those things that's always going to be up in the air. And what's been really interesting for me as a football fan this summer, but someone that worked in football finance for many years, departments of a particular bank I worked for used to lend money to football clubs to buy players, because of course, as we know, it's cheaper sometimes to borrow than it is to spend large sums of cash in your bank accounts. And this summer, there's been this real kind of frustration from fans of low ball offers, going in lower than the asking price, trying to drive the price down, which it strikes me as strange that people are suddenly weirded out by someone who's buying a commodity or a product or a player or a service trying to drive the price down. City were never going to come in with 150, 160 million pound bid straight away. It's about testing that water, seeing the kind of response you get, because even with City's money, you want to pick up Harry Kane for as cheap as possible. So for me, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Man City's where he's going to go as well. I completely agree with what you're saying in relation to that. There's no doubt about it. A few people here are asking, Terry, can you ask about Sterling? Of course, Sterling's linked with a move away continually from Man City. Do you think there's any truth in him? He may be leaving the Etihad this summer?
Maybe. I don't think. I mean, we know because we saw the teams that were getting picked towards the end of last season that he's not one of Guardiola's undroppables. There are a few players that will play in every game if they're fit, and Sterling isn't one of them. So I don't know because like he was out of form, so the manager left him out. I don't think that would force Sterling to leave Man City. Generally, footballers back themselves, and unless Guardiola is telling him to leave, in which case, if your boss says go away, then that is something that you might do. I'm sure he would want to stay at City because there's enough games to go around, and he'll back himself to get into the team. I don't think that he would be likely to be sitting there saying, well, actually, I'm less good than Bernardo and Ferran Torres or ever. I think, and particularly now that he's going to be able, he's absolutely flying. I wouldn't be surprised if Guardiola has players that he would sling to Tottenham if he could to make the Harry Kane deal happen. But if you're Raheem Sterling or Riyad Mahrez or any of the other people that you think Guardiola might bin if he had to, why are they going to Tottenham? Or at least before they would say yes to going to Tottenham, they'd be trying to find somewhere that they thought would be better. So, yeah, I don't think Sterling is unsellable. I don't think Guardiola thinks he's unsellable, but my guess is that he would prefer to keep him because he's a good player.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, I know that Arsenal have made inquiries about him. We've had Dean Jones and a couple of other journalists on the terrace that have kind of spoken about that, but it's what else happens if the Jack Grealish and Sancho deal goes through. Maybe that changes Raheem Sterling's mindset and everything else. We have a super chat here. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about Sancho to United. We're going to look at the Varane situation, the Camvinga situation. There's big links today with Leon Goretzka as well. So we are going to delve into all of that. There was some breaking news this evening in relation to Haaland as well. So we're going to touch on all that and get Daniel's opinion on that as well. But you can send in your super chats. Remember, any super chat over the value of £5, your name will go into the prize draw on the 1st of July to win a football shirt of your choice. So it's just our way of giving back to you for all your amazing donations. And on that selection here says, any Liverpool news, everything seems to be on the hush-hush, maybe a surprise signing like Jota again. Liverpool are notoriously difficult to get information out of when it comes to transfers. Is that what you're finding at the moment as well?
I definitely haven't heard anything about Liverpool. No, I mean obviously they've got Konate already. How much more money are they going to have without selling players? I'm not sure. Where do they want someone? I think the player that Liverpool have always needed, and I mean Klopp really recognised it when he tried to sign Fekir. Was it 3 summers ago? Was they need just a bit more creativity in midfield? I know they bought Thiago, but he's more someone who you want to control the game rather than someone who's going to play the final pass or the key pass to help take apart a tight defence. They could probably do with one of those kinds of players, but I think the thing with Klopp is the way his system is predicated is it was originally 3 hard-running players in midfield. It was Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum. Wijnaldum's obviously left now, but if Thiago replaces him, then if you were to sign a more number 10 kind of player, some kind of playmaker, then you're only left really with one player running about. And then that changes the whole system because the 3 players charging about in midfield was what allowed the fullbacks to basically be the playmakers. So I'm not sure what Liverpool want. They might want one more forward because if like one injury and then you're suddenly just relying on the same 3 players, but that might also depend on who leaves. Just Liverpool will be better next season because they won't have as many injuries. It seems inconceivable that they have as many injuries as they had. So they will be better, but I don't know how ready Konate is. I haven't seen much of Konate, so I'm sure what they'll have done is they'll have looked at all the young centre backs available: Konate, Torres, Koundé, and they'll have decided that they think Konate is the one with the biggest upside and the best of those, and that's why they've brought him.
Yeah, the impression I get, again, it's everyone we speak to is very, very, as you say, tight-lipped. Liverpool don't release a lot of information. But I actually think it's also to do with the fact that Liverpool are unsure right now who they can go to. They're, of course, linked with Patson Daka, someone that was heavily... the Patson Daka situation kind of reminds me a little bit of Kai Havertz, continually linked all year long to a Liverpool move. And then when it actually came to the summer where he was available, nothing really happened. And whether that's because it was too expensive and in Havertz's case, definitely there was no way Liverpool last summer were dropping 70 million, 80 million pounds on a player. And the Patson Daka deal, it's a case of no one's come in yet and taken Shaqiri or Origi away. They've obviously got the front three they have now that needs, in my opinion, needs to be refreshed, but doesn't seem to be any movement of players leaving either. And I suppose I can kind of gauge by Liverpool fans that interact with us here at the Terrace, there is such frustration starting to creep in because they're seeing Chelsea start to make, Chelsea only really need a big star or two. We'll get onto that a bit later. United have now landed Sancho, but there's some work going on. And even Arsenal are doing a lot of business right now in terms of getting players in. And I think Liverpool fans are feeling a bit frustrated that there isn't as much movement. But
there's plenty of time. And the thing is you can never judge. Like we always see like which clubs had a good summer and ranking people's summers. You never know what a player and what a team are going to do till you see them on the pitch playing football. Like the most obvious example that springs to mind is when Man United pissed the league in 2000 and 2001. And in the summer of 2001, they signed Varane and Van Nistelrooy. And I think those were the shortest the odds have ever been for a team that's going to win the Premier League. And didn't win it. They didn't even come second. I mean, I guess that we didn't know that they were going to sell Jaap Stam and swap him for Laurent Blanc at that point. But the point is that you don't know what players are going to do until you see them play. And I mean, think about like the season that Liverpool came second to Man City. I don't think anyone expected that. People didn't expect Man United to come second last season. People didn't really expect Liverpool to finish so far off, or expect City to win the league by as far as they did. You have to wait and see the players. Like you can think that a player will work somewhere, but it's not always just about the kind of player that they are. It's about the kind of personality that they are, how they're feeling in their lives, and just the way that they meld together with the other players. Like you can analyze things in a way where you're looking for someone who is what you need and particular qualities that you think a team is lacking, but people are fucked up. Like you're never quite sure how people are going to be. You can't always predict them, and the transfers that you think are going to work don't always work, and the transfers that you don't think are any good often come out to be good. So you can only there's no point judging what you've seen until you've actually seen something. Although I understand where you've got owners who want to take money out and put money in, that is frustrating, where you can see areas in which a team clearly needs to strengthen. But until you see the quality of the players play, it's hard to have any kind of opinion.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, just look at this tournament we're in right now, and it's everyone that was sharing their predictions. I think 95% said France are going to win. And it was just everybody picks always. I think it's very easy to pick what you think might happen. So when there's a big transfer story, I predict it won't happen. That's an easy prediction. That's what's likely to come true. Like everybody that's even with if they sign Grealish and Kane, I get on paper that means City walk the league. But as you say, that example of Manchester United you've just given, the fact that when City won it 2 years back to back with 109 and then following season 98 points, nobody would have expected the following season for them to lose more games in the Premier League than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Man United and finish 30-odd points behind Liverpool. Teams just sometimes don't click, or there could be, City could get an injury-plagued season like Liverpool got and it go wrong. So I just think for teams need to focus on themselves. I look at Liverpool fans and think
it needs to be one injury. Also, because if you think about the main reason why City won the league is that they defended sensibly. One injury to Diaz, and that is gone.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And they do still have. I mean, obviously they have Laporte, they have Aki, they have Stones, but the guy that made that happen was Diaz. And watching him play, it wasn't even so much that I thought this lad is a brilliant defender. He's a good defender. But the thing that I thought most watching them play was the way that he galvanized everyone else into not wanting to make a mistake, into doing everything possible to stop the other team scoring, into expecting to win, expecting to keep clean sheets. And you could see the way that his mentality transformed the players around him. Take that away, as happened to Liverpool with Van Dijk, and that's not the only reason Liverpool didn't win the league. They had loads of other injuries as well, and also the players didn't play well enough, didn't play as well, and teams coming to an end of its cycle. Also, that the best this Liverpool team I thought played was the year they came second to Man City. The season they won the league, they achieved unbelievable results in the first half of the season. But in terms of the way they actually played, their form, I didn't think it was as good. And then we saw them drop again, and they need a bit of refreshing now. But yeah, like one injury to Diaz and City will have a problem. And you can't, when you have really good players who are really influential, you can't cover for their absence by having other players, or else they wouldn't be those players. Like the best players, like you can try and find workarounds, but ultimately the best players are usually irreplaceable. That's what makes them the best players.
No, I totally get that. And I think it's, everyone's going to do a bit of business this summer, and you often never know who's had the best window until it, took up. We've all seen big money signings flop and not do as well as we expected. Pepe at Arsenal is definitely a prime example of that. Of course, today there was big breaking news a couple of hours ago. It was a here we go. It was a done deal. Jadon Sancho is a Manchester United player. 73 million pounds is now the quoted price, considering Dortmund wanted north of 100 million last year. From a commercial standpoint, it's a tremendous piece of business for Man United to get it done. They've got it done early. What kind of signing do you anticipate or feel Sancho will be for Man United next season?
Well, as I said before, you can only look at what you think you're getting. And United have had a gap on the right wing for years, pretty much since Nani left. They haven't had a right winger. And that has a very significant effect on the way they're able to attack. Like this last season, we'd see teams just leaving Wan-Bissaka on the ball because there was no one who was going to help him, and they knew that he wasn't that great going forward. So whereas on the other side, United had Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford, who were excellent individuals and a brilliant partnership. And teams knew that if you funnel United over to the other side, then Mason Greenwood is a brilliant talent. He's going to be an amazing player. He's pretty good now, but he wants to get into the box. He wants to come inside. He wants to shoot. He's not. So he can make his own chances, and he was getting better at making the play towards the end of last season, but he's not a playmaker. What you get with Sancho is you get goals and assists, which in the end are the main thing that you need. But you also get someone who is going to stop opponents leaving the right-hand side of United to just see what happens. They're not going to be able to leave Jadon Sancho and hope that nothing bad happens to them, because it will. So it's going to stretch the opposition defence much further across the pitch. It's also going to be helpful Wan-Bissaka as well, who I said isn't great going forward, and he isn't, although he's better. But one of the things that's been hampering him is he hasn't really had the opportunity to build a partnership with anyone, and he hasn't had a winger outside him. What Wan-Bissaka is really good at is driving forward with the ball. And now that he's going to have someone with feet to do the cleverer, daintier bits, they'll get more out of him. So it'll make that kind of difference as well. And I think sort of in the longer term, the main difference that Jadon Sancho is going to make is he gives United another playmaker. When Pogba was injured, once teams knew how good Bruno was, they realised that if they double up on Bruno, if they take Bruno out of the game, then United are going to struggle to create because he's the main creator. Pogba comes back, and obviously that changes. But then you have a team that's slightly unbalanced because you don't have a number 6. Maybe United would sign, if United were to sign a player who would be able to allow you to play Pogba and Bruno together, then things might change. At the moment, they don't really have that player. Like McTominay is the best version of that player that they have, but he's not really a sitter and a passer. He's a runner who you want running with the ball, carrying the ball, getting into the box. He's not someone who can control the tempo of a game.
Yeah.
But that means that there's kind of a balance issue, which is why Pogba was getting played on the left wing towards the end of last season, because they wanted to have him in the team because he's got brilliant ability. Didn't feel that he could be trusted in a midfield that also had Bruno in it.
Yeah.
And that means that you're shifting Marcus Rashford over to the right, where he's not as comfortable, and sticking Mason Greenwood on the bench, which is taking one player out of where he wants to be and taking out another player who was just in great form. And it was a workaround, but it's not sustainable. So what Sancho means is that if you stop Bruno, United have got another playmaker who can play on the right, on the left, or come inside, number 10. And you can't, stopping two-mate playmakers is much harder. And it then means that if you wanted to, you've got more scope to get rid of Pogba. And ultimately, like Paul Pogba can do some amazing stuff. And he was not pretty consistent from about November to the end of the season when he was fit, tailed off at the end. But I'm not sure that you're ever going to be able to balance a midfield 3 with Bruno and Pogba in it. And if that is the case, and Pogba's got a year left on his deal and he wants to go at the end of next season free, then if you're having to choose between Bruno and Pogba, then that's no choice whatsoever. I mean, Bruno's 100 times better for United than Pogba has been. It's not even close. And so United could now afford to lose Pogba, perhaps, get in a slightly different kind of midfield player, but not lose what Pogba gives them because they're replacing those attacking aspects with Sancho.
Yeah, on Paul, and I get that. And on Paul Pogba, there's big news today that, he's leaning towards a move to France or in conversations with PSG. Based on what you're hearing and based on what you're reading as well collectively, obviously you'll know who the trusted sources are and people. Do you expect Pogba to be a Man United player next season? And
I don't know.
Signing a new deal?
I actually think that Pogba would happily. I mean, and this is me guessing. Like, I'm not. This isn't what I've heard. I'll tell you what I've heard in a second. But me guessing is that quite likes being at United now and wouldn't mind staying. But if something came in that he wanted, he would take it. He would definitely want to take it because he doesn't know if it will be available to him again. I mean, so if Paris came in and paid the money for him, and what I've heard is that if he does leave, then that's where it will be to, most likely. If Paris will pay for him, then that scenario probably suits him quite well because what Pogba is Pogba's the finishing touch to a team, and he's if you look at the way he's been at United since United got good, he's got much better because he's someone who's not going to elevate a team. He's someone who will make a good team better. Paris are already a good team, and they don't have much creativity in midfield. So if you have Pogba at Paris, then he plays in the league, he wins the league, and then he's one of the guys that they'll be relying on to make the difference and get them over the line in Champions League. And he gets to go home. And so if Paris paid whatever the amount of money would be that United would ask, it'd probably be like 50 million, 60 million quid or something at this point with a year left, I wouldn't be surprised if that deal suited everyone, really. But I also think that Pogba and United would be relatively happy for Pogba to stay. But I don't know, because you're never quite sure once you bring the Glazers into it, because they're not going to want Pogba leaving for free very much either. And in that case, they might start if he's not going to sign a contract, they might start pushing him towards the door, or they might not want to give him a contract because if they give him another 4 years on Pogba money, they might not want to pay him for that amount of time when he's starting to get into his 30s, or they might not want him to be in his team in 3 or 4 years' time. So there's a lot of different interests, but if he leaves, I had heard this like quite a few months ago now that if he was going to go, it was going to probably be to Paris because no one else has got the money, and also Madrid and Barcelona don't need a finishing touches player; they need like the body of the team kind of players. So I don't think they would buy him, or they've got the money.
The Pogba situation, as you said, I think for a few summers running, this has kind of been the story with Paul Pogba. It's the club are willing to let him go for the right money. The player's happy to stay if that doesn't happen, but no club's actually come in yet and put their money where their mouth is and actually put a bid in. And of course, the pandemic has made that harder because of the financial situations of a lot of clubs. And obviously the reports that are suggesting that Man United will sit down with Paul Pogba, that now may happen sooner rather than later, or at least with Mino Raiola anyway. Once the Euros were finished, and sort of talk about new deals. What does he really want? And as I say, every other day now, it seems like the news around Pogba leans in a different direction. One day it's saying it looks like a PSG move, then it's favoring to stay. Based on what you're saying, there's almost this element of it's swinging every day in the wind in a different direction because it literally could go any way as it stands right now.
I doubt that. I doubt that Pogba knows where he's going to be next season. I might be wrong, but I doubt he knows. I'm sure. Yeah, I think that most parties would be happy with more than one outcome. So
yeah,
now United have got Sancho. I think Pogba is much less essential to them. If they weren't going to get another playmaker, then unless they were going to trust one of the younger players coming through to fulfill that role as the other playmaker apart from Bruno, they would have had a problem. Now they've got Sancho. I think that they've got a bit more room for manoeuvre with Pogba. And if he were to leave, I think that would probably suit everyone. And if he were to stay, that would kind of suit everyone as well.
I hear you on that. Another player Man United fans are interested in is another potential exit. With Sancho coming in, Anthony Martial, a number of rumours that the club could look to actively sell him this summer. What have you heard in relation to that? And do you think that we could see Anthony Martial leaving Old Trafford over the course of the summer of 2021?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that he lost his place to Cavani. Mason Greenwood's coming through. And behind him, you've also got Anthony Elanga, who is going to probably, I mean, he might be ready for a loan now, but he's someone who they think very highly of. You've got Amad Diallo as well. So it's starting to look like he's getting squeezed out. And I think that because he had that season, the season before last, where it looked like, okay, the penny's dropped, he's got it. And then you have the season like the one he just had, where there was a brilliant performance away to City because he has loads of ability, but I think the way he performed this season made it clear that he's not someone you're ever going to be able to rely on. And if United were to get rid of him, then they get a decent amount of money for him. And that would mean that they could then go and buy another player. And they've already effectively replaced him in the squad with Sancho. So, yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely certain that they'd sell him if the money was there.
Yeah, like a lot of these things, is the money being right. Another deal that, again, seems to fluctuate every day. He's going Paris. He wants to be in England. His agents are now in England. Raphael Varane leaving Real Madrid. He's linked with a big money move to Man United. Chelsea's name had been mentioned again today. What's your thoughts on the Varane move this summer?
I think that'll happen. I'm not certain, but I've been told that he wants to come to United. He's told Madrid he's leaving. They reckon 50, 60 million euros. Can't actually remember if it was euros or pounds, but whatever it is, if you get Varane, it's quite a good price, will be enough to make the deal happen. There was concern on his side that United were prioritising Sancho and the midfielder. So what they wanted was there to be a bid from elsewhere that forced United into action. I actually don't think that's true. I think United would like a midfield player, but I think that Ole would prefer a centre-back. I think he thinks if you offered him one of the two, I think that he wants an upgrade on Lindelof more than he wants a midfield player, which personally I would probably prefer the midfield player, but I think both are required. And I mean, because if you have someone like Lindelof's a good player, but he is someone who has risen to the extent of his athletic limit. So he's not going to get any bigger. He's not going to get any faster. He's not going to get any stronger. And over again, you see goals being conceded because that is the case. And even if he might have all these other abilities that will compensate for it, but he doesn't. He's not brilliant enough at all the other stuff so that you would put up with the lack of physical presence and the lack of pace. So I'm sure that Ole wants that player. And the thing with Varane is, that he's good and he's not that expensive. I mean, I'm sure the wages would be intense, but he's not that expensive. Whereas if they go and buy, like, as I said before, like Liverpool probably think that of the young centre-backs that United could get, who they could obviously buy if they just paid the money, Koundé, Torres, Liverpool think they've got the best one. I don't know if that's true, but you sign Koundé or Torres, it's a punt. Like Lindelof and Bailly were punts, and you don't know how good they're going to be. If you sign Varane, you have a fairly good idea of how good he's going to be, of what he is, what he can do, and his ability to perform at the top level. So that combination of readiness and money, because Ole needs to challenge for the title next season. So buying potential, like a centre-back who's 22, no centre-back really is that good at 22, almost no one. Whereas if you sign someone who's 27 on, say, a 4-year contract, if you get 2-3 years out of them as a first choice, then you're getting value for your money there. And come to the end of the contract and you either keep them around or you don't. And I guess United would probably hope that maybe Tottenham was ready at that point. I don't know. But yeah, it seemed like the difference between what you'd have to pay for Torres, Koundé and Varane is probably not a lot of money. I mean, it'd probably be a lot of money in wages, but that you're getting almost a sure thing with Varane. And so that deal, because only if I hadn't heard that Varane wanted to come to United, I would just assume that he was trying to get a better contract off Madrid. That very much doesn't seem to be the case here. and Varane wants to come to United. United want a centre back. Varane's not that expensive. And then if you start to factor in what players that United might sell, like let's say United sell Dalot and Lingard, you could basically get Varane for not far off the money that you would get from those sales.
That's true. And I think what stands out to me, and it's great as a United fan, it's great to hear that he wants Manchester United. And, we hope that's true. We hope we can pursue this deal. When you think Ben White's going for 50 million, when you think Koundé, the talk is 60, 70, Pau Torres, 50, 60. Varane's not even that old. He's 28. So, and centre-backs tend, he hasn't got a bad injury record. He looks physically fit still. You've got a player for 5 years there. If we get him in for that 40 to 50 million, I heard the same as you. I heard 50 to 60 million euros. So if you're picking him up for about 40 million pounds, when you consider the price of these, yes, players that are 3 or 4 years younger, but the quality, 4 times Champions League winner, World Cup winner, world class. It's a deal that Man United should be pursuing. And the viewers, you've just heard that there from Daniel himself. Varane wants Man United. Man United want a centre back. The deal is being worked on. A lot of the viewers were also asking some questions as that was going on as well. What about the CDM area? Of course, today we heard about Goretzka and maybe Man United looking at him should Paul Pogba leave. We've heard some rumours and links to Camvinga in the last few days as well. In relation to Man United's midfield, what's the latest there, Daniel?
I'd be amazed and delighted if they sign Goretzka. Getting German players out of Germany, even when they don't play for Bayern, is problematic because Bayern always sign them.
Yeah.
When was the last time a player left Bayern Munich? I mean, I guess Kroos did, but there aren't many times a player leaves Bayern Munich when Bayern Munich don't want to sell them and then go somewhere else and succeed. So, I mean, Goretzka, I think, is out of contract at the end of next season, but I think Goretzka's amazing. I think he's an amazing person and an amazing player. I would absolutely love to see him play for United. I would be staggered if that happens. I really would.
Yeah, of course. And the thing is, he's, as you said, I know a lot of people were saying about CDM. That isn't his role as a CDM. But
no, I mean, he'd be a Pogba replacement, but he'd give you more. So that's what I was saying when I was talking about replacing Pogba. You don't replace him with someone like and that's the thing. Not there are any players like Pogba, but if I was replacing Pogba, I wouldn't be looking for a player like Pogba. I'd be looking for a box-to-box player probably who gave you some running power, some ballast in midfield, some physical presence, and goals and assists. So whereas I'd be looking. I used to think that player would be Saul Niguez. Not that I ever thought he'd come to United, but I kind of one of the modern iterations of that player. Not sure he's turned out to be quite as good as it looked like he was going to be. But Jude Bellingham, that's another like that kind of player who can basically do everything, and then you can play them. You play them instead of Pogba because in the end, like Pogba can do some amazing stuff that will take your breath away, but his numbers aren't that good. So getting in a kind of box-to-box player, it wouldn't be that big of a stretch to think that they could replace Pogba's numbers and allow a more dominant kind of game. Because one of the things with United is that they struggle to control the midfield in games. And I think part of that is because they don't have that number 6, but also they have 2 high-risk, high-reward players in Bruno and Pogba. Like they'll try a lot of stuff because that's what they do. But if you have 2 players in midfield that try a lot of stuff, then the opposition are going to have a lot of the ball. And it's fine when you're playing teams that you're better than, but when you're playing in big games, that can be quite difficult. And having Pogba also, he's not that into pressing, which means harder to win the ball back, which comes back to what I was saying about the difficulties of controlling midfield. So if Pogba left, someone like Goretzka, who does score goals occasionally, does make goals, does have physical presence, yeah, I mean, he would be him and Bellingham would be the players. I mean, I know I'd be amazed if United could sign either of them this summer, but those would be the kind of players I'd be looking at. Or you go and find the next one of them. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Daniel. And do you know what? It's a case of back to the Goretzka thing. It's one of those deals where my view is I love the fact that we'd want him, but it's so unrealistic. It's almost if I heard Man United were wasting their truck, the only way it makes sense is if Goretzka tells Bayern Munich that he is just simply not signing a new deal, and they're going to lose him for free next year. If you get where I'm coming from, that's the only way it happens. And until we hear news that he doesn't want to stay at Bayern Munich, it's one of those deals where I can't even allow myself to think about it, because it's so honestly, I think there's more chance of Tony Stark returning as Iron Man in the next Marvel film. Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that for me. In relation to Camvinga as well, I know we spoke about that earlier on today. How realistic is that a move for Man United this summer?
I don't have any information about that. I'd be amazed if United wouldn't quite like to have him, because everyone that's seen a lot of him, and seems to be a lot of people on Twitter who seem to have a season ticket at Rennes. Because I'm kind of not entirely sure how people come to have such fully formed opinions about him. Because when are they watching Rennes? But he's someone who everyone knows is one of the best young players in the world, and who looks that he can be moulded into whatever you want him to be, because he's got all the abilities to play in all the midfield positions. So obviously United will know about him. Obviously they'll have watched him because they have scouts and that's their job. He, again, makes sense because he's available not that he's available, but the club, there is a sum of money, and it isn't that high, that would persuade Rennes to sell, because they don't want him to leave for free next season. So the question then would be, does he want to come? What do United want to do with him? I mean, I don't know. He's someone, I don't know if he would be a Pogba replacement, because they could also sign him and try and convert him into someone to take the ball off the back four, which, I mean, as I said, I don't have that season ticket at Rennes, but I'm led to believe that his passing out of defence is really good, and his ability to carry the ball out of defence is really good. United need that player. I know I had heard that they really like Declan Rice. I can't see that they're going to pay the money that Declan Rice is going to cost this summer. I'd be surprised if they're spending whatever it is on Sancho. Then I imagine the money that they spend on Varane, let's say they sign Varane, the money that they spend on Varane, I think that they could probably generate most of that with sales. But to expect the Glazers to then fork out another 100 million quid of United's money, rather than keep it for themselves in order to sign Declan Rice, I'd be surprised. And I mean, it sort of makes sense.
I agree. I do not see a proper midfield signing. I mean, there's talk of Ruben Neves, maybe a 30. If we pick up a 30, if Martial leaves and we raise the funds for Varane through sales, but also on top of that, Martial leaves, I could see a 30-40 million pound midfielder coming in.
You could probably get Camvinga for something quite close to that.
Yeah, I think a star midfielder coming in, though, of a Rice or an Ndidi level. I only think that happens if Paul Pogba leaves. And like you've said, maybe the train of thought is that extra creativity that we now get from Jadon Sancho, if Pogba does go, then it's a case of, well, we're not going to try and replace Pogba like for like. We're actually going to go in a different direction and go for a Declan Rice. I'm only using Ndidi as an example. I don't think there's a genuine link to that. That's the only time I think that's going to happen, as you say, this summer. And with West Ham, I mean, Dean Jones quoted it about 2 weeks ago. Matt Laws again this week. West Ham are asking for circa £100 million for him.
Yeah, and because they don't want to sell Declan Rice ultimately. Because then there was anyone that Declan Rice isn't worth in this market, isn't worth in any market, isn't worth £100 million. He's a good player and seems like a really great character. Like, I'm absolutely certain, like, he's the kind of personality that Ole would want in the dressing room. Like, he likes young English, young, hungry, aggressive English players. I'm absolutely certain that Declan Rice appeals to him in that aspect, but he doesn't look to be £100 million player to me. Like, he's got really good abilities, but what I'm sure about is, even if United were to sign Declan Rice for £100 million and he came and was great, I'm sure that even then you could have found a player for half that money to be as good. And Camvinga is sort of in that bracket of someone who costs half as much you probably get him for, and is probably as good, if not better. But there's more of an unknown, obviously, because you know that Declan Rice has done it in the Premier League, and that was always one of Fergie's favourite things to do. Was Gary Neville was always talking about this: go and sign the best players in the Premier League that you don't already have.
Yeah, because... and I agree with you. I look at Declan Rice. I think he's brilliant, but he's not. For me, he's not 100. He's not a 90. A push, I'd say 60 million, brilliant. Any more than that, and I think you start burning money where you can invest elsewhere. Ro here with a super chat. Daniel says Pogba is a much better player than Goretzka. Pogba is the best attacking midfielder in the world, is what Ro has to say there. Ginger Fury says Lingard to stay or go. What's your thoughts on Lingard? Do you think he'll get his move away this summer, or do you think he could stay?
I would expect that he'll go. I think that he needs to go in the end, because I really like Jesse Lingard. Really like the attitude that he plays for United with. Always loved how much he appreciated playing for United and dancing at the Emirates. Not last minute, but an amazing volley to win a cup final when United had 10 men. One of my favourite United moments in some ways, for lots of other reasons that I'll go into another time. But he'd gone stale at United and he needs to play. And that's never going to happen at United. He might be someone who plays League Cup games and who you toss on if you're looking for a goal, or who you might play when you're resting other players. But he needs to play. And the thing at United is that there are players behind him. And I don't think that United need Lingard, because I think he's blocking the route for players like Hannibal and Ahmad. And I don't want him taking minutes away from them. But also just for his sake, he's clearly found something at West Ham, liked hanging out with the other players, particularly Rice as it goes. David Moyes. People always David Moyes respects flair. People have this view of David Moyes that he doesn't appreciate flair. That isn't true. It's not his first notion when putting a team together. And I don't think he wants a team to play flair football, but he absolutely appreciates the value of having flair players to win you games. I mean, he's not an idiot. David Moyes is a good manager, and he understands that you need to have one or two of those players in a football team. He gave Lingard the keys to that team. He put him in at number 10 and let him do what he wanted, and it worked brilliantly. And I'd be surprised if Lingard. I hope West Ham have the money for him, because he seemed to just work there. And when footballers move around, play for different clubs, it doesn't work for them everywhere. If you find somewhere that does work, then you should probably stick with it. And I think Lingard will go, because I can't see that him staying works for anyone. And United will want the money freed up by the transfer fee, the wages. They'll want as I said, they want to bring the young players through. And I think they also want him to play. They want the best for him, because he's not going to be a first teamer at United.
Totally get that. There's a super chat here, Daniel, that says, is there any truth in the rumours that Cavani is talking to Roma?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I think you don't know, because I think the rumours ridiculous.
I don't know, because I'd like to say that, because obviously I'd like to think that me and Edinson chat regularly and tell each other what's going on in each other's lives, but we haven't spoken for a bit, and so no, I don't know, but yeah, it sounds untrue.
Yeah, I mean, with everything he said about Edison, as you say, he's publicly said this, let alone to what he said to people privately, Daniel. He's so excited to be playing in front of an Old Trafford crowd next year. He wants that. He wants that experience.
He had his whole, am I going to stay? Am I not going to stay?
Yeah.
And he's made his decision. It seems unlikely that an offer from Jose Mourinho's Roma is going to persuade him to change his mind, when he's obviously agonised with his family over making this decision and made it. Seems unlikely that Roma is a good enough option to make him reevaluate everything he thought, because he would have, if he decided he was leaving, he wouldn't be, because when he wanted to leave, it wasn't so much he had a better offer. I think it was just that he wasn't particularly happy in Manchester, wanted to go somewhere where he felt more at home. He's now decided that he's happy enough with it, and his family are happy enough, so that he's going to stay. It just seems unlikely that he's going to change that now.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. One of the final talking points, staying with strikers, Haaland to Chelsea is a deal that continues to be spoken about. Duncan Castles has quoted today via Simon Phillips. Simon Phillips put this out. Duncan Castle says Haaland expects to join Chelsea this summer. I've heard today there are total agreements in place, but on sort of personal terms. There's also the reports with FFP being relaxed and more personal wealth being pumped in. A big bid is expected from Roman Abramovich. What's your understanding about the Haaland deal? I think we all know it's going to be a very difficult one to get negotiated because of the cost and price. But what's your thoughts on the news surrounding Haaland today?
I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that. I could see it happening either way. Like, there is probably a number that will make Dortmund sell. Roman Abramovich could definitely afford whatever that number is, and Chelsea need a centre forward. So it's not a massive stretch to think that it might happen. I think that if I was Haaland, unless I was desperate to live in England or live in London even, I think that I'm surprised if he would consider Chelsea as somewhere he wanted to play, because I think that he wants the biggest club and the biggest stage. I think he wants to play for Madrid. That's what I'd heard, that Haaland wanted to play for Madrid. I doubt Madrid have got the money for him. So maybe he'd want to go Chelsea, and if you play in England, earn a few more quid, then go to Madrid in 2 years, because obviously he'll still be good then, he'll still be young then. But I mean, there's plenty of reasons to think that deal could happen, and plenty of reasons to think that deal couldn't happen also. But I don't have any information on it. But maybe, I mean, I guess Dortmund could say no, but then they stand to lose a lot of money. But then how much on top would it take? So how much would you value a season of Haaland for? Because he can leave, let's say that he can leave for 70 million quid at the end of next season. If they offer 100 million quid, that's not going to be enough, is it? Like, 30 million quid Haaland for a season.
I think what's really interesting about what you've said there is the same report from Duncan Castles is that Mino Raiola is trying to get basically a release clause put into the contract with Chelsea. So to your point about, does he, maybe he comes to a Chelsea for 2 or 3 years until Real Madrid can afford him again. That's exactly what a release clause would be in there for. For me, I cannot see Chelsea allowing a release clause in a contract in any way, shape, or form, because unless it was for £300 million, I just cannot see Chelsea Football Club, with the way they're run, allowing a player to be able to dictate in 2 years' time what goes on.
Yeah, I mean, but that's one of those things, because then at the same time, if you get 2 years of Haaland's goals, you might win some trophies.
True.
Because I mean, I think the same about Haaland. If my team, if Haaland was coming to United, obviously I'd be thinking he's just a goal monster, and that is a very convenient thing to have in a football team. But you don't want the fuss all the time of, is he going to leave? And the manager can't build if they think that because he would obviously come and become the main man. You can't build if you think the main man's just coming briefly. So you can't. But then United signed Cavani as a stopgap. They're really happy with how that worked out, and think about having Haaland as a stopgap. That will work out. So you can see both sides.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. And as I said, we weren't planning. There's quite a few of the deals we mentioned tonight that we didn't plan and prep for earlier. It was mainly sort of, we were actually going to do Sancho Nuno updates, but before we even went live, those were announced. So those are the two big ones, along with the Raphael Varane news. But of course, we always like to pose questions and thoughts from the audience to you, and a lot of them are asking about the Haaland deal. And for me, I just see it being a deal that can be done. It's just going to cost a lot of money. And it's even as a United fan, I love Haaland at my club, but it's the dealing with Mino Raiola that would put me off, because I feel like, as Man United fans, Chelsea fans, City fans, you feel like when you sign a player, as long as they're scoring and it's going well, you don't want this notion of they're going to force a move in 18 months, 2 years. And as much as I love Paul Pogba, one of the frustrating things has been, it feels like every 12 months since he's been here, there's been links with moves away, agent talking to people. And I get that, players love Raiola, he gets them what they want and stuff. But from a fan's perspective, it isn't always particularly nice. Ro here says, what has Rice done for him to be a £100 million player? Phillips is much better than Rice. United has better midfielders. Stop comparing Pogba with Rice. I don't think. Yeah, listen, Ro, I respect you, but we're not. I know I mentioned that. I'm not comparing Rice and Pogba. We know Pogba's a better player. My point is, I think if Man United sell Pogba, I don't think we're going to go for a like for like. I think we're going to go for a different type of midfielder, and it could be somebody like a.
I think that's the thing. Now that United have Sancho, they need a player who plays in Rice's position more than they need Pogba. And as I said, like Rice, I think I prefer Rice to Phillips as it goes. I like Rice's mentality. I like his ball carrying. I think that he's got a bigger upside than. I think he's more likely to become better than Phillips. But whatever. I think that United just they've needed that that midfield player, someone who can control the tempo of the game for a long time. I don't think Rice is that player. The thing is when you've got Pogba and Bruno, that third player needs to have physical power. They're going to need to do a lot of running from side to side, like covering basically the width of the pitch in front of defence. Yeah. If you get a slightly different kind of player to Pogba, like even if it's Scott McTominay, who, no, I'm not saying he's better than Pogba, but let's say you have McTominay, Bruno, and you sign Camvinga, whoever it is, a number 6, then that blend gives you more room, even if it gives you room to have a passer. If you've got someone who covers more ground than Pogba alongside Bruno, running box to box, trying to score goals as well, basically McTominay's natural game, then rather than have a physical player, because if you've got Bruno and Pogba, the other player's got to be a physical player. They've got to cover a lot of ground. They've got to have legs. Whereas if the number 8, McTominay or whoever it is, if they have legs, or Bellingham, that kind of player, then it means that your number 6 can be a passer. Yeah. And that's something that United don't have, like someone to take the ball off the back 4, to pass it well out of defence, to start building the play. At the moment, there's too much of that onus is on Harry Maguire. And someone who can build the play, but to do that, you need to have not Pogba, I would say.
Totally agree. Listen, everyone who has tuned in today, a massive thank you to each and every single one of you. Some great insight into some of the deals that are going on, some great tactical analysis as well for us, and some in-depth look at some of the players. Of course, this is the Done Deal Show. That's what it's cool, but there's no cap that goes on here. We don't have journalists on that pretend they know about every single transfer that's going on in the whole world, because just to shock you all, none of them do. And that's about the credibility that we're building here with the Done Deal Show moving forward. Thank you for everyone who's hit that like button, to all of our new subscribers as well. Over 47 new subscribers during the show as well, which is absolutely brilliant. So a massive thank you to each and every single one of you. Until next time, take care, goodbye, God bless, and we'll see you